Yeah, so hello and welcome to today's online tutorial session. In this tutorial session, we are going to treat functions in Python. Yeah, function in Python. So a function is a reusable block of code which only runs when it is called, right? You can pass data known as parameters into a function, right? And the function can return a result as well. So basically, a function is just simplifying your work for you by avoiding you to or limiting you from repeating um, any task which is often repetitive, right? So if you don't want to be doing one thing over and over and over again, you can just create a function for it, then pass in some arguments, right, or variable inside that function. Then within the statement you do whatever you want to do. It can be computational, it can be some logical comparison, and then it should return some results. So that's basically the whole concept about function. It's mostly called the user defined function. So for function, this is how we create a function. We use the def statement, right? Then after the def, meaning define, you are defining a function, right? After the def is your function name, right? So over here we have our function name as print underscore name. It is any name at all, but it should be reasonable, right? So print underscore name. Then we pass in, or we expect this variable or argument, right, called name. So this an independent variable. Is that fine? So this print name is a function of this argument called name. It's like your y of x. Y is the dependent variable and then x is the independent variable. So whenever I put in something here, the dependent variable, responds to it, right? So we expect name. In this case, it should be a what? A string, right? Then as usual, we bring our colon over here, leave an indent, then we issue this command, right? We want to print my name is, then the name that the user passes in, right? So yes, whenever you call it, then this is called this means you are calling a function, right? Then you bring in a string called Christian. You can do the same thing with John. Let's try this in Jupyter notebook. uh, so I said you have to first type def, then maybe let's say name, then you bring your parenthesis, right? So I expect we can put in anything here. The argument can be any letter or maybe a set of some words. It's either name, you can do it name, or I just decided to do it and then column. Then I can issue a command over here as print. So print that a string, your name is, then I can bring a column over here, a comma over here, then include this. Whatever the user gives me over here, I can just pass it or include it over here. So let's run the code and then let's call the function. So whenever you do this, you are calling a function, right? You see it's missing an argument. So you just have to put in an argument, right? So your name is then John. Whenever you change it, your name is Rita, changes to Rita, your name is Ama, it changes to Ama, right? But whenever you don't put in anything at all, you see, it's missing one required positional argument n. So though you've called the function, but it's not going to run. So that's a simple case of a function. You can have a whole complex function. Let's say, let's do something a bit computational. Let's define yy, right? A function called yy. And let's receive some two arguments. Let's think of it as maybe the y-intercept is called c, and then the slope m, or a slope called m, and let's just return an equation of the line for the user based on what he gives us in the function. So let's say that y is equal to, so let's try this. This is called a formatted print statement, or a formatted statement. If I bring the print, it's called a formatted print, but I can't bring a print statement inside a variable, right? So I can just declare a variable as a formatted, string, right? So this is when I want to include a variable inside my string, or any argument inside my string, an argument or a variable that has been defined previously somewhere in my code inside this string that I'm creating right here. So let's say that return that y is equal to, there's a conversion. If I want to include a variable that has already been predefined, so I have to bring a curly bracket, a pair of curly brackets. So m, right? As for x is a normal string, then plus, I want to include the intercept, right? Then I do what? I return. So let's return y. Whenever the user gives me c and m, I have a variable called y, and y is a formatted print statement. Is that fine? A formatted print statement. So let's run it and then say something like, let's give c as 2 and 3, um, m as 4, right? So it gives me that y is equal to 4x plus 2, right? What if I want to do something more interesting, and I can say something like big C should be equal to um, 0.5 times whatever the user gives me as my C, and then big M is equal to 2 times whatever the user gives me as my slope, right? In this case, I have to change this M to capital M, and this C to capital C, then still return Y. So you see that when I give 2 and 4, it now becomes 8x plus 1. So yes, this is a simple case of a user-defined function. So instead of me repeating this task, right, I can just include it in or wrap it inside a function, right? And then it becomes reusable as many times as I want with different instances, right? I can just some big numbers here, sorry, and it still works, right? So of course you should expect an error if you put in any other data type like a string over here. You should expect a very nice error, right? So you should know, but anything apart from that, like a float, should work, right? Because these parameters here are continuous, right? They are not distinct, so they can be continuous. I can put in 98.2 and it should still work. But anything apart from an integer or a float, it shouldn't work. So yes, this brings us to the end of this simple tutorial on user-defined function, and I entreat you all to practice more and get more, problems to work around with this. So thank you and see you in the next episode.